Hello, hello. All right. Just confirming. Can you guys hear me okay? Just type yes into the chat if my volume is good. Um, but I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Caitlin. I am a registered dietitian, culinary nutritionist, and trained chef. And I work with Health Fairs Direct and Be More Health Coaching. And we are going to thank you for the people that or person that responded yes. We are going to start our masterclass series today. So the first part of the series is You Are What You Eat. And this is a very interesting presentation. This is the first time I'm presenting this particular presentation. I present a lot of this in other presentations, but I compiled it together for you guys for this one. We are at the mercy of the internet. So if I get disconnected, just give me a minute to hop back on. If you get disconnected, don't worry. We are recording this. All of these classes will be recorded. For these to work well, this is an interactive presentation, meaning it's very helpful because, well, it's very helpful if you guys like answer the questions I'm asking, and you guys learn so much more that way. And please feel free to stop me at any time and ask questions. All right, make sure you stay muted. I think I said that. So we'll just communicate through the chat. All right, so here we go. Have any of you ever been to a Chinese food buffet? Yes or no into the chat. Have you been to a Chinese food buffet? I have. I love Chinese food. It's very good. Some yeses, some nos. All right, so here was my experience at a Chinese food buffet. Anyways, buffets, people generally feel like they need to eat more food. For whatever reason, they feel like you need to eat more food because you paid for it. Well, generally speaking, we do. We eat more food at a buffet. So I ate a lot of food. You know, afterwards, it was like 2 hours later and I was hungry again. And I'm like, how? I just ate so much food. How is this possible that I'm hungry again? Like I didn't feel great. I just felt kind of yucky. Like when you eat a bunch of like fatty foods, you just kind of are sluggish. And today we are going to break down why foods make you feel a certain way. And we're going to kind of dive in deep to the goods and the bads of different foods. And I feel like this is really going to open your eyes and explain why you might feel a certain way after you eat a particular food. All right. So now what I need you to do is I need you to type into the chat your dream car. If someone was going to knock on your door and hand you the keys to a car, I need to know which car would it be. I'll just pick one of them. Fully paid for. You don't have to, no strings attached. What car would it be? Maybe no cars. No one's answering. I look over here, my chat is open on the side if you wonder why I keep looking off to the side. All right, well, I will pick a car. Let's say somebody knocks on your door, hands you the keys to a Lamborghini, and they say, you can have this Lamborghini, no strings attached, but it's the only car you're going to get. So take good care of it. And you're like, this is great. This great brand new car, beautiful, awesome. All right, so you're driving it around and you realize you need some gas. So you pull into the gas station and you go to put fuel in your new Lamborghini. And you pick up the diesel and you fill up the Lamborghini with diesel. Well, chances are your car is not going to work very well because diesel shouldn't go in a Lamborghini. We would probably use a premium gasoline. You know what is interesting is that we do the same thing. We go to the gas station. We or when we're eating. We go to the grocery store, we just kind of buy whatever. Not many of us are sitting there reading the instructions or the ingredients list or the nutrition label. A lot of us, if the Lamborghini was us, we would put the cheapest gas in there because we also are a cheap, quick culture. So we would go ahead and grab the cheapest gasoline, and our Lamborghini would not have a lifespan that it could have. The sad truth is, so many of us treat our cars better than we treat our bodies. We pay more attention to when there's a check engine light on in our car, or we clean the trash out of our car, or we buy the more expensive gas because the car needs to be maintained. Well, we need to start doing that to our bodies. So let's take a deeper dive into our fuel, our gasoline, which is food. There's 3 ways we get calories. Everything we eat falls into one of these categories or a few of these categories. So we have protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and the other would be water. And then you get other things that are added to these, but these are our calorie sources. So we're going to break down each one of these individually and explain kind of the good and the bad of each. All right, these are carbs. I love carbs. You know what? People fear carbs, and they shouldn't, because carbohydrates are our body's preferred source of energy. We like running off of carbohydrates. I recommend, and to my clients, even if you're diabetic, about 50% of your calories every day should be coming from carbohydrates. 50%. And now you're sitting at your computer thinking, she's crazy. 50%? Like, I can't eat that much bread if I try. But carbohydrates don't just come from bread. They come from 5 main food sources. I like to break them down this way. It's easier for me to explain them to you. So the first are going to be our grains, which are our obvious carbohydrates. Those are going to be breads, pastas, cereals, oatmeal, things like that. All of those contain carbohydrates. Next, we have fruit. All fruit, whether it's fresh, frozen, dried, dehydrated, a juice, those also contain carbohydrates. Then we have our starchy vegetables. Now, most vegetables have a small amount of carbohydrates, but we don't worry about those so much because the carbohydrate amount is so little, it doesn't really affect us very much. So the carbohydrates that I count, or the starchy vegetables that I count as carbohydrates, are going to be corn, potatoes, peas, and legumes. So things like black beans, kidney beans, things like that. Then we have our dairy products. So milk and yogurt are carbs. And then last would be sweets, cookies, cakes, soda, that kind of thing. Those are all carbohydrates. Now, there's a good and a bad to carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, we'll go to this slide next and might explain it a little bit better. Okay. So like I said, half of our calories should come from carbohydrates. So if you're doing it right, you're not just eating all bread. You're getting a little dairy for some calcium and vitamin D. You're getting some fruits and vegetables for all of those vitamins and minerals. You should be getting some whole grains. And we really should be avoiding these carbohydrates this way. The wrong way. I'm on a green screen, so it's always backwards. It's so confusing to me. Anyways, we want to limit the simple carbohydrate. So what is a simple carbohydrate? These are carbohydrates that are broken down very easily. There's little to no fiber in them. They take very little for our bodies to digest. The easiest way I can explain it to you is an orange, like a good size orange, or about 6 ounces, 4 to 6 ounces, depending, of orange juice, both contain the exact same amount of calories. They contain roughly the same amount of carbohydrates. However, if you drink the orange juice, your blood sugar, so your energy level, is going to shoot up very quickly because there's little to no digesting involved in digesting orange juice. But if you were to drink if you were to eat an orange, you would actually feel a little full, and it would take a little bit of time to digest. So our blood sugar would only go up slowly and not spike up like the orange juice. Now, you're probably thinking, I'm not diabetic. Why is she talking about blood sugar? Well, blood sugar, it's what gives us a jolt of energy. So when we get that jolt of energy from a really spiked blood sugar, we're going to crash. And that's a lot of times what happens with these simple carbohydrates. They take too little time to digest, so we crash afterwards. Then we have our complex carbohydrates, which have all that fiber in there. And let's look at those. Those are going to come from fruits, whole fruits, vegetables, legumes, peas. Fiber is magic. Fiber is not talked about enough. Now, when I think of fiber, I think of older people and their Metamucil, because that's like what I grew up knowing with my grandmother. However, fiber should be your absolute best friend. Fiber has so many health benefits. Number one, if you want to lose weight or maintain your weight, fiber should be a good part of your diet. I say this because fiber digests very quickly, so it will keep us full longer. Fiber also keeps us regular. That's one of the things that it's known for. But in keeping us regular, it keeps a healthy digestive tract, meaning it decreases our chance of developing certain cancers that are related to our digestive tract. Fiber also decreases our risk of getting heart disease, having strokes, having heart attacks, because fiber decreases our bad cholesterol levels. So when you have the option to choose between white bread or whole grain bread, you should choose whole grain or whole wheat bread. You should choose that brown rice, or choose an option that just has higher fiber, because the average American does not get enough fiber. Most people don't even know how much fiber they need. All right, so men, if you're under 51 years old, you need somewhere between 30 and 38 grams of carbohydrates. After 51, we need a little bit less. Same thing, women, 51 and younger, need somewhere from 21 to 25 grams of fiber a day. I will show you later where you figure out how much fiber you're eating. But we're not getting enough. That's the bottom line. We really should. If you have heart disease, family history of heart disease, high cholesterol, you should be having a lot of fiber. All right. So protein. Protein is another food group that, I guess all the food groups really are. There, over time, diet culture and the diet industry have made all of these food groups confusing, like limit carbs, increase your protein, eat low fat, eat high fat. We just don't even know what we're supposed to do. But protein is actually supposed to make up about 20% of our diet. So 50% of our diet should come from carbs, 20% of our diet should come from protein, and then we'll talk about fat next. But just like carbohydrates, there's good proteins and there's proteins that aren't as good for us. So we need protein for everything in our body. It helps with cell production. It helps build and repair muscles. It repairs tissues. It's needed for certain hormones. It is very, very important. However, at the same time, we don't need tons and tons and tons of protein. So a lot of those diets that are recommended, people will go like really high protein and really low carb. Here's the thing. Our body only needs so much protein at one time. Any extra protein, our body really can't utilize it. And so any calorie that's extra that can't be utilized turns into fat. So, I have a question. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop. If you have type 1 diabetes, what would the fiber and carb amount be the same? That is a great question. Type 1 diabetes, first of all, if you have type 1 diabetes, you know so much more about diabetes than I do because you live with it every day. But for a diabetic type 1 or type 2, carbohydrates needs to be around 50% carbohydrates, still the same amount. Same thing with fiber. Those are the same amounts no matter what. Fiber, depending on how your body digests certain food, your insulin levels might be a little bit different. But that is still those numbers should be the exact same. Thank you. That was a great question. All right. So protein, I don't know exactly where I was. We eat too much protein. So roughly, like I said, we need 20% protein. Now, there's good proteins and there's bad proteins, not good and bad really, but proteins that are higher in saturated fat, which are those bad fats for us. And there are leaner protein options, which would be a healthier choice because they're going to be a little bit lower in calories. They're going to be better for our hearts. And just generally, they're going to be the best. So those are going to be like white fish, low-fat dairy products, tofu, lean cuts of meat like top round, bottom round, pork tenderloin, any type of poultry with the skin off. Those would be good, healthy protein choices. All right, now we have fats. There's 3 main types of fats that we're going to talk about. We have the good fats, the bad fats, and then the worst of the worst fats. So we have unsaturated fats, which are good fats. These are our healthy fats. We have our saturated fats, which are the bad fats. Saturated fats, this is how I explain it to kids when I'm teaching them about nutrition, but it's a great way to teach it to adults too. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature. Butter is solid at room temperature. Lard is solid at room temperature. Bacon fat, that type of thing. What about coconut oil? That was a big fad a few years back. It's still a saturated fat. It's still very bad for our bad cholesterol levels. Although it has some health benefits, it's not the best fat that that's not a fat I usually recommend for things. So those saturated fats are the ones that affect our bad cholesterol levels. Those bad cholesterol levels are the levels that put us at greater risk for heart disease and stroke and things like that. Then we have our trans fats, and we'll talk about those on our next slide. So years ago, fats were considered to be bad. I know every single one of you at some point in your life have heard fats make us fat. Fats get a bad name because where carbohydrates and protein are 9 calories per gram, where carbohydrates and proteins are 4 calories per gram, fats are 9. So their calories are very concentrated. I think that's where that bad name comes from. We need fats. Fats are great for absorption of certain vitamins and minerals. They give us energy. They help insulate us, keep us safe. They support cell growth. So we do need fats, and we need those unsaturated healthy fats. Before we talk about those a little bit more, let's talk about the worst of the worst. And these are the trans fats. Now, these are actually banned. These are banned in the United States as of 2020, the beginning of 2021, I believe. However, not every food product, there were some companies and food products can kind of skirt their way around the banning. So trans fats are these fats that are man-made. Trans fats are great because they're cheap. Their shelf life is like no other. So companies love them. They're like, well, they're cheap. They can last forever. We're going to make more money. Yes. And that's why they're used so frequently. They're used a lot of times in processed foods like pastries, fast food, certain frozen foods, basically the unhealthy stuff. The ultra processed things a lot of times have trans fats in them. Well, trans fats, they affect our bad cholesterol levels, but like on another level. They actually not only increase your bad cholesterol levels, they lead to insulin resistance, which leads to type 2 diabetes. They actually have been shown to affect our brain and mood by decreasing like your memory, increasing depression. They can actually cause aggression in people. Studies showed that people that had high amounts of these trans fats were like super aggressive. Now, like I said, it was banned for many. Let me see if I have my food. I had a little food container I was going to show you. I don't know where it is. All right. Well, like I said, it was banned. Certain food products like got their way around this. I don't know what regulations those are, but Cool Whip is one of them. So if you look on a nutrition label, you'll see the level or the fat, then underneath it, you'll see the saturated fat, and then you'll see like this underneath there, it'll say trans fat. Now in the United States, everything should say 0 grams of trans fats. However, you can label 0 grams of trans fat if there are less than 0.5 grams per serving. So you look at a Cool Whip container, you see 0 grams of trans fat, and you're like, yes, this is great, trans fat free. Then you go down to the ingredient list and you see the third or fourth ingredient is hydrogenated vegetable oil. Anything with the word hydrogenated means trans fats. That hydrogenated vegetable oil is in there in a small amount, less than 5.5 grams. But what happens if you have 3 servings of Cool Whip, which isn't hard because the serving is only like a tablespoon? You could be having up to 1 gram or 1.5 grams trans fats. So you need to be reading the ingredient label. I'm sorry, my camera goes out of focus. It does not like when I move around. All right, so another type of fat are omega fatty acids. And we've probably all heard of these as well. Now, here's the deal with these. We need these so badly because our body does not produce them. So we have to eat them or we won't have them. All right, let's start with omega-3 fatty acids. These are fantastic. If you have inflammation, so people that have like arthritis are sometimes prescribed omega fatty acids. People that it's been shown to possibly help with Alzheimer's. It's great for heart disease. It gets rid of the fats in our liver. It's good for brain development. That's why you'll see those in prenatal vitamins. So these are so good for us. We find these in things like fatty fish, mackerel, sardines, things like that, chia seeds, walnuts, flax seeds. You'll see me kind of peeking because I don't want to say the wrong food for the wrong omega fatty acid. Now, omega-6 fatty acid. If you Google omega-6 fatty acid, you might actually read some bad things about it. Omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids should be consumed in a balanced ratio. Because omega-6 fatty acids are in things like corn oil, which a lot of foods are fried in, Americans are having high amounts of omega-6 fatty acids. So just keep that in mind. Although it's a good thing, it needs to be in a good ratio with that omega-3 fatty acid. But they're good for us. They help with our immune system. They're good for bone health. They're good for pain management. But we don't want too much of them. They're also found in things like almonds and soybean oil, which is another thing that is in processed foods. All right, and omega-9 fatty acids, they decrease inflammation again. So anything like arthritis, any type of inflammatory illness. A lot of illnesses are caused by inflammation to begin with, like cancer. So these are all really great for the prevention of catabolic illnesses like cancer and things that really affect our body. But these are found in nuts, seeds, and olive oils. So all of these wonderful, healthy things behind me contain these good fats for us. All right, come on, camera. You can do it. I'm right in the middle. All right, so now that I went over all the food groups, let's talk about how certain foods make us feel and what foods we should be eating. So like I said, I'm a dietitian. I teach adults, but I also volunteer and teach kids about nutrition because it's not taught enough in school. And what I tell the kids that I'm teaching are you need to eat the rainbow. And I'm going to say the same thing to you because I guarantee you guys as a whole probably don't eat the rainbow on a daily basis. It is actually kind of hard. I don't do it every day. Sometimes it takes me a couple days, but this is why. Every different color provides a different benefit. So I'll go to those in a second. But these foods contain antioxidants, and antioxidants are these special things that fight off the bad in our body. They fight off the toxins and free radicals that cause things like cancer and other really serious illnesses. And they get rid of that inflammation that I was talking about. So that is why we need lots of different kinds of antioxidants. For those of you that don't know, you as an adult need 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day and 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit per day. So I'm not asking you guys to type into the chat who gets that much, but most of us don't. So let's break down fruits and vegetables a little bit deeper. I also want to say that I was doing research when I was putting this presentation together, and I was reading about this study in Australia where the people that ate processed food were much more depressed than people who ate fruits and vegetables. Processed foods, like the ones I talked about with the trans fats, it can affect our mood. It can make us feel depressed. Fruits and vegetables make us feel healthy. They decrease the bad feelings in our body. And so they were much happier, the people that consume fruits and vegetables. So like, how cool is that? You feel good when you eat well. If you eat like garbage, we've all done it. We've all been through the fast food and like an hour later, like, ugh, why did I do that? Well, it's, food is our energy. So choose good food. All right, so yellow doesn't just mean bananas. You can really mix it up with all of these. Think outside the box. There's yellow tomatoes, yellow bell peppers. There's lemons. I don't know, summer squash. But anyways, these are the ones that really help with our vision and help with our immune support. They're usually in the yellow to orange family. It's usually vitamin A. So it's really important with eye health. Orange, immune support too, but it's also needed for bone and teeth health. I keep saying immune support. Now, back when COVID was like first a thing, I would see all of these posts on social media. I would see things on the news talking about foods for your immune system. That's difficult because you can take a whole bunch of different vitamins and minerals. However, our body, like I said, with the protein can only utilize so much at a time. And with those water soluble vitamins like vitamin C, we're going to excrete the extra. So rather than taking like an immune boosting multivitamin or whatever, just eat a well-colored, usually around the yellow and red family of fruits and vegetables. All right. Purple, good for brain health. It helps with inflammation. Red, it's good for heart health, cancer prevention. Green, bone and teeth and cancer prevention. Really all of these for cancer prevention because those antioxidants, come on. Okay. Those antioxidants that are found in these foods are what get rid of and help prevent those bad cells from being remade over and over again. All right. Now, we're getting into the processed food, the food group that we all eat from. Even I'm a dietitian and I, eat processed food sometimes too. And it's not great for us. There's some that are worse than others, but such is life. All right. Okay. Let's talk about salt. Salt, like trans fat, is a great way for companies to have a much longer shelf life. Something else with salt, though, not just being a preservative, salt does help, like in canned products, preventing, like it keeps a proper acid-base balance to prevent pathogen growth. My husband, that's like literally what he does for a living. So he's always telling me about the acid-base balance for certain drinks and foods he makes. Anyways, all right. So we do need salt. We actually need about a teaspoon of salt per day for our body to function. When you look at your labs, like when you get your well check every year, one of the first levels you'll see is Na, which is sodium, because we want to make sure that the sodium is correct in our body to make sure that we're properly hydrated. If we have too much salt, it increases our blood pressure. And very high blood pressure is not good because it's extra work for our heart. It's extra work on our veins and arteries. And if you put extra work on something, it's just not going to work for as long as it normally would. So we want to keep our salt intake around or less than 2,300 milligrams of salt per day. I'm not sure if you've ever looked at the sodium in Mrs. Stouffer's lasagnas, but there's like more than 2,300 milligrams. So really the processed foods are going to be the ones really high in salt. So anything canned is high in salt. Another one that's really bad are lunch meats. They're super, super high in salt. So when you're choosing lunch meat, if you can, choose low sodium. It is out there. Canned should always be low sodium. And then if you're going to do veggies that are like frozen, make sure they're not in a sauce. Usually like straight frozen vegetables don't have sodium added to them. So like I said, salt is good, but too much of a good thing is bad. All right, so now we're going to get into preservatives and additives. Now I have that top picture on there because I don't know how many of you really know what preservatives look like and additives. That's what they look like, and it doesn't look good. All right, number one, something we probably all do is lunch meat. Lunch meat has something in it called nitrates. Nitrates are very dangerous. They are not good, especially in children. They should really look at your lunch meats. Things like nitrates, which help as a preservative, they cause bloating, they cause mood swings, they cause terrible headaches. So try and choose foods that do not have the nitrates in them. What about, there's another one, a preservative called potassium bromate. That's on the outside of things like sunflower seeds, and it actually makes it so that we can't get certain nutrients we need for our thyroid function. BPA, we've all heard of BPA. It's a chemical additive that is in certain plastics, but that's linked to cancer, mood swings, anxiety, depression. So making sure that BPA is not in things that we eat. Sometimes it's in the seals of canned foods. It was found, like popcorn bags sometimes had it, certain packaging. So just try and choose ones that are BPA free. Now, the way to find foods that have no preservatives or additives, those are going to be foods that haven't been processed. So usually as a dietitian, I tell people to shop the perimeter of the grocery store. If you think about the perimeter, it usually has the produce, the fresh meats. Meat is good for us, but once you go down that frozen section and the meat is like has breading on it or is like chicken nuggets, that's when the processing starts. It's hard for you guys to hear, but fun fact, I am in Waco, Texas, actually in the suburbs of Waco, Texas, McGregor, Texas. I'm about a mile from SpaceX, and they're testing a rocket right now. It's faint. I can hear it, but it doesn't pick up on this. So that's why I stop sometimes and listen. So anyways, back on track. So to avoid those foods, really shopping that perimeter of the grocery store. So really when you're maybe not feeling great, you're having a hard time concentrating, you're getting headaches, it could be from those ultra processed foods that have those preservatives and additives. On that note, dyes and flavorings. Dyes and flavorings are in so many things. Going to the grocery store with my children, standing next to that checkout line, all of those candies, I am like, ugh, why do they put them right here? These are not good, especially like with kids, because there has been like an increase in like ADHD and things like that. And that can be linked, and it has been linked to certain dyes, especially red dye number 5. It can cause inflammation, hives, decreased liver function. In certain dyes, there's actually chemicals that are really bad for our digestive enzymes, so making it hard to digest. Really trying to get away from foods that are artificially dyed. Now, an artificial flavoring that's really bad that we might have heard of is MSG. It's actually a flavor enhancer. It usually enhances salty flavorings. That can cause weakness, dizziness, just very bad. So you want to choose natural dyes and flavorings like vanilla extract for one. Get true vanilla extract. Yes, it's a couple dollars more, but you're not having the coloring, all of those little flavors, all of those man-made chemicals that are put in there that are not going to make you feel good. All right, always a hot topic for me, always a hot topic, is added sugar. Let me explain. Sugar is not good. Now, sugar's not good. Like a lot of sugar isn't good because of how I explained the orange juice. Sugar that's processed is a simple sugar, so very easy to digest. So you get a lot of energy at one time, and then you crash, and then you don't feel good for a long time. That's why we want those complex carbohydrates to kind of sustain that feeling good. Anyways, people think they're doing themselves this great service by choosing a more natural sugar, which does have some health benefits like honey and maple syrup. However, it's processed the same way, calorically very similar. So you're not, just because you're adding honey to a baked good rather than sugar, from a calorie and energy standpoint, you're not really going to have much of a difference. All right, so let's talk about honey. Honey is great for a few things. One, it's super high in antioxidants, so really good for our immune system. It's going to keep us nice and healthy. And the cool thing about honey is if you buy a quality honey that's local, did you know that because your local bees pollinate from local plants, it's actually can help decrease your allergies, or like, decrease the sneezing and the runny eyes, because your I don't know how the bees do it. They're magic. Okay, focus camera. It just wants me right in the center, guys. I'm sorry. Why won't it find me? I don't know. I'll be fuzzy for a minute. All right, let's go. Maple syrup is great for inflammation. So if you have any sort of chronic illness, COPD, cancer, bronchitis, come on, trying to get it to focus on me. It's not. That can really be helped with things like maple syrup that are high in that antioxidant and prevention of inflammation. So those would be reasons to use those things. Calorically, though, like I said, not doing yourself any favors from that standpoint. All right, next, agave. Agave is usually thought to be, super healthy because it's not processed as much. It comes from a plant, but actually it is a little bit higher in calories than sugar. So you are choosing something that's a little bit less processed, but metabolizes the exact same way. And then the last thing I get asked a lot about is the, maybe I don't know what's going on with that video. Let's see if that helps. All right. Whatever. I tried to use the good camera. I think this might just be better. Anyways, so artificial sweeteners, they get a bad name. However, the American Cancer Society and the FDA have marked these as safe. They are, made from chemicals that are not natural, that have no sugar in them, so that they're not as calorically, they're not going to be a lot of calories, but they should be used in moderation. That is the recommendation. So there are not exact amounts given. I will occasionally have a Diet Coke. I think everything is okay in moderation, just like I occasionally have pizza. I occasionally have this or that. The majority of your diet shouldn't come from these chemicals. Okay, monk fruit. That's a great question. I don't know how many calories per gram. Monk fruit is going to be a more natural choice for you. So you are going to get that health benefits from the monk fruit itself. I'm not sure the calorie difference. I'm sorry. It's a great question. I should write down to include that though, because monk fruit is becoming more of a hotter topic these days. All right. So still talking about sugar. Now that I've talked a lot about sugar and you're like, okay, I get it. I don't eat that much sugar. There's sugar in things that you probably don't realize how much sugar is in. Let me give you an example. Let's say tomorrow you go to the grocery store and you say, you know what, Caitlin, that presenter yesterday, I'm going to eat healthier because she just was such a good presenter. And you're like, all right, I'm going to go buy some yogurt. And you go over to the yogurt aisle and you go and you pick up a Dannon fruit on the bottom, blueberry yogurt. And you're like, I'm going to start my day healthy every day. And then you pick it up and you look, there's 12 grams of added sugar. Women, if you look, that's half of your daily intake of recommendations for added sugar. That's a ton. That's a lot. And then you're like, okay, Dannon's got to be bad. I'm going to try Oikos. Oikos is like the more expensive one. It's the blueberry non-fat Greek yogurt. That is 13 grams of added sugar. You really need to look because added sugar is under the carbohydrate level. I'll show you when we get to the page that has the nutritional label on it. It's there. But sugar's also in things like, as we know, like granola bars, a Cliff Bar, which is more of like a healthy, more expensive granola bar, has 20 grams of added sugar in it. So I know you guys know that added sugar isn't good, but I want you to start looking at that. We really want to keep that number small. So these were the recommendations for men or for women. Even in things that are savory, like pasta sauce, Ragu, the brand Ragu, has 8 grams per serving. Prego's has 10 grams per serving of added sugar. That is a lot. So really be looking at all foods that you are eating. All right. Mood. We kind of touched on some of these things, but if you want to be in a good mood and like feel better, those omega fatty acids are very good for mood. They've been known, several studies have shown how they can actually improve depression in certain people. Same thing with dark chocolate. It has mood boosting compounds. So who doesn't want to eat a little bit more chocolate, fermented things like kimchi and yogurt and kefir and kombucha, they can help with gut health, and so much of our mood and so much of everything comes from gut health. And so eating those fermented foods really can help your overall health as well. Really looking at foods that are good sources of iron, zinc, vitamin A, vitamin C, those B vitamins, omega-3 fatty acids, those are going to have good moods, good moods. Bad moods would be like highly processed foods. Basically everything bad is going to have to do with highly processed foods, but really sugar sweetened beverages, foods with little to no fiber, deep fried foods, foods with trans fats. All right, energy. So energy is also going to be those complex carbohydrates, so the carbs with fiber. So let's say you want to do potato, you need to make sure that you have the skin on, so you're getting all of that fiber. Things like fatty fish with those omega fatty acids. Of course, caffeine is going to help with energy. Eggs are such a healthy source of protein. They're good for energy. They're extremely nutrient dense. And they also contain a lot of B vitamins in there as well. So that will help with energy. And then something that people don't usually correlate to energy is water, making sure that you're getting enough water. That water is needed for every part of our body. We'll get to that in a minute too. And yes, so those would be energy foods. And now if you don't want to have energy, if you have a lot of sugar sweetened things and then come off that high, that sugar high, then you will run out of energy. Also, fasting, like if you haven't eaten or you've been fasting, you're clearly not going to have the energy because your body wants those carbohydrates to utilize. All right, sleep, things like potassium, things that naturally have melatonin or tryptophan in them. So bananas have potassium, yogurt has melatonin, or calcium, which helps process that melatonin and tryptophan. Kiwis naturally have calcium and melatonin. Cherries contain melatonin. Avoid coffee, heavy foods like that are really fatty, that they're hard to digest. It's not good right before bed. Anything spicy, if you have any sort of reflux. I have to kind of run through those because I want to get to the nutrition label and we're running out of time because I just could talk about this for hours. All right. So what are we going to look for now that like we know all these bad things, we know all these good things? Number one, we'll look for words like organic. We'll get to that in a second. Whole grains, you want to make sure your ingredients have a short list. There was a Breyers commercial years ago, and it was like, will you guys type into the chat if you remember this commercial, or it's just me? I talk about this commercial all the time. No one knows what I'm talking about. Okay, there's this commercial, and I think it was Breyers ice cream, and the little kids would sit there and read the ingredients off of a different brand's ice cream label, and then they would read the ingredients off of their ice cream label, and it would be like cream, sugar, vanilla. Does anyone remember that, or is that just me? Anyways, really look for words that you can pronounce. If you know what they are, they're probably healthier than things that are a gazillion letters long that you don't know what it means. Avoid long ingredient lists. Avoid words like trans fats, hydrogenated, high fructose corn syrup, food dyes, artificial flavors, and preservatives. All right, so nutrition label. All right, so you always want to start with the serving size. People think you're supposed to start with calories. You need to start with the serving size. If you don't start with the serving size, you don't even know what the calories are pertain to. So make sure you're starting with the serving size. Next, I always say, don't focus on the percentages. Most people don't need 2,000 calories per day. I need more than 2,000 calories per day. You might need less. You might need a lot more. So don't worry about the percentages so much on the side. We want our trans fats to be 0 always. We want our saturated fats to be as small as possible because we really don't want to have more than 10% of our daily calorie intake from saturated fats. With sodium, you really, like in an individual food item, you don't want it to be more than 180 milligrams. Or if it's an individual meal, you could probably keep it near 500 milligrams, but per day, the gold standard would be 2,300 milligrams or less. So where it says sugar alcohols on this nutrition label is usually where it would say added sugar. And this was just a clip art that I was like allowed to use, you know, how that all works. But anyways, I couldn't find one that had added sugar because those are the new nutrition labels. So make sure that added sugar number is pretty small, like usually 5 or less is a good rule of thumb. You always want the protein in a food, especially like yogurt, to be higher than the added sugar. And then remembering that protein doesn't have to be an astronomical amount, because we really don't need as much protein as we think we do. And we get protein from many food sources as well. Now, I did run through that because I want to have time to go over this slide. And I want a few minutes for questions at the end. Okay, this slide is one, I love this slide. I have a whole presentation about this, what I'm about to talk about. And I call it food fraud, because companies love making money like everyone. So they market things a certain way. And some of these things that are marketed don't mean what you think. All right, start with some of the good ones. If something says it's gluten-free, it absolutely has to be gluten-free. It is illegal for them to write that it's gluten-free if it's not gluten-free. USDA organic is usually a very good thing. It is certified, it is inspected, it is checked up on. That's a good thing. Now, other than that, we'll get into it. Certified organic. So you buy something that's certified organic, it's usually going to be I'm sorry if you hear my dog, on one of the center aisles of the grocery store, because it's going to be in a package, it's going to be in a box. And that 95% of the ingredients, up to 95% of the ingredients in there are organic, meaning everything in there is not organic, but you're spending a lot extra on it. 100% organic usually means that one's fine too. It's not used very often. You won't really see that. Made with organic ingredients is only 70% organic. So the ingredients in there, not all of them are organic. So again, it's not really worth spending all this extra money on that, because it's not even fully organic. Organic, when I say organic, it usually, it refers to the soil quality, the pesticides, what the animals are fed, that type of thing. So keep that in mind. The word natural, which is used on lots of things, means nothing. There is no guideline and no one to check up on that. You can write natural on things because there's no real guideline of what natural is. Same thing with local. There's no guideline that's local. Like I said, I'm in Texas. I could get avocados here that say local, that they're from Mexico, because there's no mileage. You know, there's no mileage standpoint for that to be, I don't know. Eggs, marketing with eggs. Brown eggs and white eggs are the same nutritionally, pretty darn close, but they come from different hens, but they want to charge $2 or $3 more for brown eggs. It blows my mind. Same thing with free range. Free range isn't often checked up on. It does have guidelines, but there's a lot of backlash on the guidelines. They don't get to walk around that much. So again, not saying it's not a good thing. It's just not as great as you think it is. And then the last one that I see so much on is bread. The terminology whole grain bread, if you buy whole grain bread, the first ingredient could be white flour, because if it has whole grains in there, you can put it. Same thing as multigrain. It could be a white loaf of bread with some extra grains in there, and it's considered multigrain. When buying bread, look for 100% whole wheat. All right, my last slide before we run out of time is making sure that you're getting enough water. It's the main part of our blood. It turns our food into energy. It helps with our breathing. It delivers our oxygen to our cells. It's so important. So making sure that you're getting enough water so that you feel your best. Like I said, dehydration. If you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. And dehydration can have effects on your mental abilities. It can cause delirium, confusion. So staying hydrated. The general rule of thumb is about half of your body weight in water every single day, and limiting those sugar sweetened beverages, because those do not make us feel good. I know I kind of rushed through those last slides, but I do want to leave time for some questions. Before I ask about questions, I do want you guys to Follow us on social media. I do a ton on social media there. Recipes, giveaways, nutrition tips, exercise tips, stress management tips, all sorts of cool stuff. So did you guys learn anything? Was that, I'm just curious because it's so much information to put into less than an hour. I got to talk kind of fast sometimes. You guys have any questions about anything? Next week, we're going to talk about mindful eating. Marion said she learned lots. That's great. I'm so glad that you did. I could talk all day. But it's just, the bottom line is there's so many, you know what, I'll find out about monk fruit for whomever asked about monk fruit for next week. But there's so many confusing things out there that make nutrition so confusing. Okay. What is the relationship between sugar and high cholesterol? It's a great question. So sugar itself doesn't cause high cholesterol. Sugar leads to weight gain, and weight gain, a lot of the foods that have all of those added sugars in there increase our cholesterol levels. But they're just associated with each other because it has a lot to do with weight gain. Sugar itself doesn't affect our cholesterol level that I know of. Other than, it could cause a fatty liver, I suppose. And the liver, you know, is part of what helps make that cholesterol in our bodies, because the cholesterol that we eat, like eggs got a bad name for many years because they have cholesterol in them. We've learned that most people aren't affected by dietary cholesterol. It's by those bad fats that we take in. And some of that processing happens in the liver. So that's the only thing I can think of. But no. Speaking of lunch meats with nitrates, what would that include? All lunch meat or just packaged? Very important. Not all lunch meats that are like not hand cut, like the cheaper lunch meats. I don't know how it's the ones, you know, that are already cut. Some of them are nitrate free, and you'll see on the packaging it will say nitrate free. So you can get both kinds of lunch meats, the kind at the deli counter and the kind that are a little bit less expensive, nitrate free. You just actually have to look at the nutrition label and not just trust the little claims on the front. All right, guys. Well, if no other questions, I will see you guys same place, same time next week, just a different talk. I'm going to teach you how to eat whatever you want and stay nice and healthy. All right. I will see you next week, guys. Thank you.